So today on Screenshots, we're looking at, my second look at the debacle that was the Twilight Zone movie from 1983. This situation gave a lot of Twilight Zone fans some trepidation and some anger when it occurred, because I don't think anybody should be killed on a film set for the sake of the director's, oeuvre. When John Landis and Steven Spielberg decided to produce kind of a relaunching of the Twilight Zone series as a movie, Landis had put together an opening episode that was supposed to feature actor Vic Morrow, and during the filming of some of the key scenes of that episode, which talked about a bigot who put through various errors of hatred before he was supposed to redeem himself, he died, and two young actors died with him on set in a very tragic helicopter accident. Now, on July 23rd, 1982, a Bell UH-1 Iroquois helicopter crashed on the site of the Twilight Zone movie. They were filming in Valencia, California. Now, according to public records, not only 3 people on the ground were killed, including Morrow and 2 child actors, Micah Din Lee and Renee Cindy Chen, but also almost fatally injured the 6 helicopter passengers. Now, the incident led to numerous years of civil and criminal action, and in a good way, it led to new standards and procedures in the filmmaking industry. Now, because Twilight Zone, the plan was to have 4 different sequences, besides the blackout at the first and the end. One of them was kind of based on the Twilight Zone episode of Quality and Mercy, which talked about a bigot that's made to see war in the eyes of his sworn enemies. Now, in the script of this episode, Bill Connor travels back in time in the midst of the Vietnam War, where he decides to protect some Vietnamese children from American troops, and this was supposed to be the dinner of several racism incidents he went through time, like he was the black man, he was a Jew that was put through the bullying. Now, director John Landis, who I think really dropped the ball in the whole situation, and should be still serving criminal time in jail for killing all 3, not deliberetely, but, with his bad decisions. He deliberately violated California's child labor laws by hiring the 7 to 6-year-old children without the required permits. Now, Landis and his staff, again, were also responsible for a number of labor violations connected with other people involved in the incident, which came to light after the crash. Now, Lee and Chen were paid under the table to circumvent California's child labor laws, which of course did not permit children to work at night. Now, Landis had an option to seek a special waiver, but according to published reports, he didn't do so because he did not think he would get permission for such late an hour, because he knew he wouldn't get approval to have such young children in a scene with a large number of explosives. Now, the casting agents were unaware that children would be involved in the scene, and associate producer George Falsley Jr. told the children's parents to not tell any firefighters on site that children were part of the scene, and hid them from a fire safety officer who was also working as a welfare officer. Now, in the scene, which is available online, because 3 different angles of the scene were being filmed when the accident occurred, and I do recommend to anybody, if you're going to look at them, out of respect to the family, take it in the concept it is. It's a very graphic end to all 3 lives. Now, Vic Morrow was used to action scenes because he was on combat, and he did a lot of action scenes through the years. And Vic Morrow always had a premonition on different sites he would be killed by a helicopter, and in the minutes before the crash, he said, I got to be crazy, to do this, because, I need a double. But in the scene, he was supposed to carry both children through like a watery bog to the other side with all these explosions going on. Now, where it was filmed in Indian Dunes, it was a popular location where everything from MacGyver, China Beach, Escape from New York, Color Purple were filmed. It was a good sight lines and good audio, and it had wide topography, of course, Green Hills, dry desert, so it can mimic anything. Now, the site had doubled for various locations across the world, including Brazil, Afghanistan, Myanmar, and of course Vietnam. Now, the night scene called for Morrow to be carried the 2 children across the river while being pursued by U.S. helicopters. Now, during the filming of the scene, the helicopter was very close to the ground, a little bit too close, actually no more than 25 or 30 feet. Now, when some orders went off The tail rotor failed, and the low-flying helicopter spun out of control. Now Morrow dropped Chen out into the water, but when Morrow tried to pick Chen back up, the helicopter fell on top of Morrow and decapitated him and Lee, and Chen was crushed to death by the landing skid. Now, this happened within 5 or 10 seconds of the explosion and the helicopter rotor working bad. The defense in the court case said the explosions were detonated at the wrong time. And basically, even people on the ground were wondering why Landis was even trying to stunt, because most of the primary filming for Morrow in that episode was done. This was kind of not say the last shot, but close to the last shot. And Landis basically was, heard on the radio saying lower, lower, to get a helicopter lower. And Landis allegedly shrugged off warnings about the stunt. And, and as it went on, the FAA investigated and resulted in a fatal accident. The National Transport Safety Board recommend that the terms of these type of action sequences be applied to all aircraft, whether small helicopters or whatever. Now, as the court case went on, it led to civil and criminal action against the filmmakers, which actually lasted nearly a decade. Landis had appeared in court, various members of the staff. Landis and several production people on the event, including explosive specialist Paul Stewart, were tried and acquitted on charges of manslaughter in a 9-man trial in 1986 and 87. And there were several lawsuits that were settled with the families. Allegedly, they collected millions of dollars, including Morrow's family and the 2 young children. He said basically the people that were in court, and Landis really never, he apologized, sure, but he never really seemed to really catch on that maybe he was totally at fault in this, because he was the one that decided the scene would be filmed in the first place. Now, new safety regulations came in place because of this, but it didn't bring back, obviously, the 3 people that get killed. And according to published reports, now following the incident, this is good news, accidents on sets fell by 70% between 82 and 86. Although there were 6 deaths on sets, it was considered more accidental than anything else, not indirectly deliberate. Landis's career, of course, went on, but and he said in 96, there's no good that came about this story. He said, I think about this tragedy every day, and would she possibly never recover? And granted, there was a falling out between Spielberg and Landis on the situation. Spielberg broke off his friendship, and it kind of, Spielberg said in published reports, it made him grow up a little bit. Now, I basically believe that Landis should have served severe criminal time. He did cause the death of those 3 people. If a person is caught for vehicular manslaughter, it's not deliberate, of course, but in this case, he should have served at least a Canadian life in prison, 15 to 25 years. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but sometimes when you think you're bigger than the industry or bigger than the people you're guiding on the set, the reason why those 3 people are dead is because Landis, through manipulation or trying to get the best shot or whatever, caused these people to be killed. Now, Vic Morrow was a talented gentleman. His career obviously would have went on after this if he would have survived. Jennifer Jason Leigh, his daughter, we always say that Vic Morrow, although he had a tempestuous relationship with his daughter sometimes, he could have guided his daughter's career a little bit like Bruce Dern and Diane Ladd did with Laura Dern. Morrow was always a favorite of the entertainment fans in my family. He was a good quality actor. He could play villain, he could play hero, play comedy. But as it stands right now, I mean, John Landis before that was a comedy icon. And, I went to see Twilight Zone, the movie, because I had a tribute to the hardworking people who put it together. But it was always in the back of my mind, why am I sitting here? Because, I want to see a history and see what all the deaths was all about. And when the first part of the Twilight Zone, the movie, with Vic Morrow, it was lacking and everything. Like, it didn't have the fire of the original Twilight Zone magazine. And I thought to myself, well, this is what what killed these people? Like, why? Now, I know there's been a lot of changes. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of different accidents on sets throughout the world, including, DC and Marvel productions. But as it stands right now, I don't think we'll ever go back to a moment where you're asking two children that have no experience, that are very tiny, to be carried in 2 o'clock in the morning through water by an actor in his 40s and 50s who was only physically so capable of doing so much. And, sets back then were unprotected. There was a lot of outlaw things going on. There was a lot of shortcutting. At least there's been changes now, but it doesn't bring back the two young people who would have had a great life. It doesn't bring back Vic Morrow. Vic Morrow could have went on to an even maybe greater career because of Twilight Zone, because a lot of people were saying it was going to reignite his career a little bit. So if you ever watch Twilight Zone, the movie, I'm sorry I'm harping on the accident that much, but there's good parts about the movie. It's not a movie that's going to change you, but at what cost Hollywood? At what cost the lives of people who basically were being abused? We talk about Michael Jackson rumors about sexual abuse, but what about all the child actors who were abused on site, on a movie site before that too? Stunt doubles and stuff like that. And we look at Spielberg, how he used some of these younger actors through the year, like the young lady from Poltergeist. There's no question that he was better to his actors than Landis and other people were, but Landis should have served real jail time. People say, well, what difference would that make? Well, I mean, you do the crime, you pay the time. I mean, if I go on assignment and accidentally murder 4 people, drive in a snowstorm to a tournament, I'm driving with no winter tires or with no regard for human safety, I would expect to be charged. I give an example. My mother was hit by a joyrider years ago, and he never got any criminal sentence. He got a fine of over $1,000. No justice was served there. We forgave the individual. He didn't mean to kill my mother, but he needed incarceration to fully rehabilitate from what happened. So I mean, some people don't remember the 1980s with all the movie set problems we had. This was the most major one, and there's been a couple of books published. But I think if we get into Netflix generation like we're doing now, I'd like to see a true documentary as to really what happened, and maybe in a way to remind people out there that this thing, again, it's limited, but it can still happen again. Because if you don't watch Hollywood or the entertainment industry, things like this are going to happen. And I got some colleagues that have been stuntmen in the industry, including Derek Hamilton, my good friend who works in the BC industry, and John Walsh from Dalhousie, who's been a stuntman for years. You got to protect your stunt people. Don't put them at risk. Protect everybody. Keep the limitations that are giving, because if one person gets injured on site or dies, it's one too many. It's good to be creative, it's good to be part of entertainment, but please do not stretch the rules for your own ego. And John Landis has always been an egotistical person, because that's just how you are in Hollywood. If you would have stepped back a little bit, those people would still be alive, right? You had nobody basically tell him, John, can you take it easy? We've filmed everything, we don't need a scene, can we? And see, this was before computerization. You could do it on computers now, which is a lot better. See, computerization has saved lives through the years. If you talk to any creators, you don't have to use thousands of people like the old shots with Cecil B. DeMille and D.W. Griffith and all that. So on this beautiful Tuesday, post-storm in New Brunswick, we wish everybody a happy day and Shrove Tuesday. Please celebrate. Lent's coming up, and give up something that's been bad for you, and you'll feel good about it. Keep your stick in the ice. Have a good day. Bye.